In session with Jail Care, the space where healing hearts connect.
Adults, we are big children. The car you drive might be motivated by the dream you had as a child. The place you live, as much as you're building towards your dream, is also motivated from that inner child. And so that inner child really drives a lot of who we are as adults.
Welcome to another episode of the In Session podcast, the space where healing hearts connect. I'm Jail Care. Today's conversation is one I've looked forward to sharing with you so much. We're joined by Dr. Moses Macharia, who is a trauma specialist, a psychotherapist, a man who wears many hats. He's a husband, a father, a musician, a golfer, and someone who deeply truly loves people. In this episode, we dive into trauma. Yes, the big T. What it really is, how it shows up in our lives, and why healing often begins with acknowledging that even as adults, we're still carrying our childhood with us. Dr. Macharia speaks with clarity, warmth, and a touch of humor about everything from childhood wounds to why therapy is not a quick fix, but a journey of returning to your most authentic self. So, whether you're new to mental health conversations or knee deep in your healing journey, this episode is for you. So, grab your tea, get comfortable, and let's get in session.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Macharia, for making the time to be with us today, just to have a conversation with us about trauma and all things mental health, really. So, karibu sana. Please introduce yourself to us.
Asante sana. My name is Dr. Moses Macharia. I am a trauma specialist and also help organization in curating employee assistance programs. What here at Intimacy Dai Wellness Center we call employee wellness programs. We've just tweaked the name a bit to be very inclusive and holistic approach to it. Yeah, so that's pretty much me. I sit in Intimacy Dai Wellness Center as one of the psychotherapists in this space.
How is your heart today?
On a scale of 1 to 10, my heart is at an 8 or 9. 8, couple of challenging stuff, but also very enthusiastic and excited about this episode when we get to demystify mental health and just check out some truths around it. So I'd say a solid 8, and it's a beautiful day. So really excited to see how all this pans out. And for the one who are listening in, there'll be lots and lots of good conversation going around, I believe. Yeah.
8 is a good start. So, if I am to understand who Dr. Macharia is, outside of all the titles that you said, what do I need to know?
What you need to know is I'm a fun-loving person, a husband, a father. I think those come before anything else. A brother, a friend, someone who loves people genuinely, no pretense, just 100%. Loving people and loving people to be well. Someone who loves music. I believe if I never studied what I studied, my 2 undergraduates, I would have been like Einstein. I would have been a concert pianist. So yeah, that's the other thing I get to do on the side, which I really, really enjoy. And it's just a way of decompressing.
Which you have just, I think, responded to a question that was to follow up. How do you decompress as a psychotherapist?
A lot of psychotherapists have various ways and modalities that they get to do. My approach is I believe in the power of music as a healing tool, both to myself and to the clients that I get to serve. Number 2, as a catharsis, I love golf. So I would go to the golf range and just shoot some balls. And yeah, fieka nyasi. For the ones who love golfing, know what I've just meant right there. I go fieka my shamba, I fieka my nyasi, and I feel lighter when I leave that space. But over and above that, I think as a therapist, debriefs really, really work. wonders. Yeah. And taking good breaks like social media detox and break. I am just from one actually. And I feel lighter. Yeah. Away from all negativity and noise.
Oh, yeah. So, mental health. How did you get yourself here?
Jel, that's a beautiful question. So, how I landed in mental health. My first degree is in medicine. And so, courtesy of my parents, I was pushed to a medical school. Shout out, mom and dad. We finished. And around third year, I just felt, no, I'm missing something. It's a bit more. I would really want to spend more time with the patient. I had a keen eye to the medical fraternity who most of them in Kenya statistically are struggling with burnout, are struggling with, stress, lots of anxiety because there is a lot of societal pressure. You having all this fancy title. Na ujalipa rent, And so I could pick these things and I found myself talking to a couple of people who are going through stuff. And I thought, hey, what if I just did psychology? Now, when I was in standard D6, nowadays it's grades, but when I was in standard D6, I had a little notebook that I wrote who I really wanted to be, and part of that was I wanted to study psychology. Now, psychology is a big word for a kid who is in standard six. And I just went back home and I saw that notebook and I was like, maybe I need to do this. This makes sense now. I'm able to help people over and beyond just the curative part. We can focus on the preventive part with a mental health focus. And that's how I landed in the field, went to school, doubled up both medicine and psychology. And then after graduation, went back to school to do a degree in psychology. And that's how I ended up with 2. And post that, did a master's in something else around HRM because of supporting organizations. And so it's been quite a beautiful journey. It's a journey motivated by the need that I got to see in the society with the people that I really care about. And so part of my client base is built out of probably, as you can guess, the medical fraternity, of course, just being a helping hand. And I know statistically, odds have been stacked against us, against the medical fraternity, because you get to hear stories, be it at KNH, a doctor has taken their lives. And people are like, what's going on? I thought he had everything covered and, figured out. But there is more. There is more. And there is need for psychologists all around to rise up to the call and put their best foot forward in being people who are solution givers in this 21st century.
That is quite impressive and quite comprehensive as to how you got here. I have a couple of questions. So from your many years of experience, having done medicine, taking on psychology, which was your first love since you knew it from standard 6, and then all these years afterwards, many people, we've had this conversation of mental health and it's just garnering popularity, so to say. Now everyone is talking about their mental health. What is mental health?
I love the fact that we are getting more aware about our mental well-being, something that's growing now. It's a narrative that's growing among young people, a narrative that's growing in our nation, in our region, in our continent. Conversations that were never discussed because they were sort of segregated for the Madhares, the Chiromos, and now conversations that we can have over a cup of tea with a friend and people won't feel scared. So what is mental health? I love the National Health Service definition of mental health, which is the way we feel and think. When I think about mental health, we can't put away our thoughts and feelings because those two are directly correlated. And therefore, how we think, how we feel drives who we are and how we get to operate. And so I'll say that's mental health, but I would push it further, with, are you able to contribute positively into your community? Are you able to deal with normal stresses of life? Because, hey, everyone is going to experience stress. I mean, you're listening to this right now, but you are going through some level of stress. Stress is normal. Our bodies are wired to stress and rest rhythm for ultimate or optimum productivity. And so as I ask this question, are you able to deal with normal stresses of life, comfortably? Are you able to contribute to your community and have a fruitful and productive way of doing life. Just sort of playing around with that WHO definition. I believe that's what mental health is all about. Yeah.
I like how you brought it down to how you feel or how you think, and how that enables someone to show up, because how we show up is really how we feel or how we think, except we don't know that that is how we feel or how we think. With that definition, and is someone able to deal with the stresses of life? When you think about how someone might be showing up in the world, there's this word that comes up, trauma, which you are a trauma specialist. What is trauma?
Trauma is the experiences that we get to experience in life that get bundled up in us and sort of affect our well-being, the way we get to do life, our physical, our emotional, our spiritual, all facets of your life. And so we go through things, we go through challenges and through situations that sometimes we get fixated at. Then we get to experience something that is given this name, trauma. It sounds all big, but it's simply, I have experienced a couple of things. For example, I experienced a robbery. Before we came to the show, we were having a conversation with my colleague, and you were there, and she shared of how, the driver was robbed, and that traumatic experience still lives on with her. And so we get stagnated with some of the experiences we get to experience, having a father who was an abusive man, and you grew up seeing him beating your mom. Or it can be vice versa. It can be a mom who alikuwa mazee bondia, ananyorosha mzae mbaya. And so that builds up trauma, and it affects the way we trust. It affects the way we operate, the way we do life. Our way of productivity is hindered courtesy of this thing called trauma. So I've tried to really bring it to that low level, which we get to experience, that we have all gone through trauma, even you and I here.
That is so true, because most people, when they think of trauma and then you ask them, are you traumatized? Do you think that you're traumatized? They'll tell you no. But then when you get to ask them their story, then they're like, oh yeah, is that traumatic? You're like, yes, it is. There's this other question that most people wonder, especially adults, because now we want to go to therapy. And I have just discovered I must have been traumatized, or the way I'm showing up is not a normal way. So must someone figure out their childhood trauma to be able to live a wholesome life as an adult? Or how does that work?
Adults, we are big children. Now, this is controversial, but we are big children. We are big children. Let me push it further. The car you drive might be motivated by the dream you had as a child. The place you live, as much as you're building towards your dream, is also motivated from that inner child. And so that inner child really drives a lot of who we are as adults. We have parents today who are parenting children, but it's not them. It's actually their inner child who's parenting this child, because they are saying, mtoto wangu hataenda ile shule nilienda. If you are like me, you went to Maganyakulo Primary School in the Kijiji, aka DEB. Shout out. You're like, no, my son cannot go to a DEB, so they need to go to a Montessori system, or they need to go to, a group of school, because you went like a group in a school, so you need to deal with these things. Most parents, when you look deeply, it's actually that inner child that's addressing, or rather is doing life today. Now, there are things called adverse childhood experiences that we get to experience as children. And sometimes they sort of are hindrances to us experiencing a fuller, authentic life that we're supposed to lead. And therefore, you see a couple of challenges that people go through because of their past. And I really feel for someone who experienced crazy or terrible childhood experiences, and they are sort of in a fix right now. it hinders the way they operate. They second guess themselves simply because they were never good enough, or they end up being perfectionists because they want to really stand out. So those are some of the things that we get to see as psychologists. Do you need to address your inner child? Yes. Can I push it further and say everyone needs therapy? Now, I know that's not a popular gospel. Dear listeners, what you're about to listen. Anyway, just kidding. But everyone needs to undergo therapy. It's the best thing. Therapy helps you deal with the past and present. And in your corner, I always tell this to, organizations, to founders, to entrepreneurs. I tell them, you need 4 people in your corner. You need, a coach, someone who's on the touchline with you. But you also need a mentor, someone who can help you dive into your vision. Then you need a peer, someone you can always, speak at a very, peer-to-peer level and have a place to decompress. But the 4th person you need in life, you need a therapist, you need a psychotherapist, someone who will help you deal with your past and present, because that really has the power to affect your future. So yes, you need to address that childhood experience, whether it was good, whether it was bad, because it opens up the door for the future.
I actually believe the same thing. Everyone needs therapy, but most people would not, especially the older generation, would not embrace that gospel, and they would have a challenge with that. But when we say everyone needs therapy, the truth is therapy is expensive. But the truth is there are organizations that offer free social support. How would you speak to someone who is like, okay, so yeah, maybe I may want to consider therapy, and I may need to address the trauma that I have, or the past and present, or I have the 3 others, but I want to include the 4th, who is the therapist. How can they navigate that when they don't have the finances for that?
Jill, you've actually alluded to something that's very, very important. The fact that there are organizations that give out free therapy. You see, therapy, yes, is expensive, but also it is within our reach. That's number 1. Number 2, therapy is relational. It's not a quick fix. It's not Band-Aid. In fact, it's ripping off the Band-Aid and scrubbing the wound so that it has a good healing process. Now, for the medical fraternity listening in, they know the wound healing process, that you really have to clean the wound for it to sort of heal properly without, developing an infection. What does that speak to us as a people, as a nation, as a tribe listening in, is that sometimes we really need to look deeper to some of the issues that we're going through. So yes, it's available. Do not be deceived that it's not available. Yes, there are people who are charging, an arm and a leg, but there are people who are giving it at a free consultation. Some organizations that are doing that. Number 2, it's relational. You get to build your relationship with your therapist, and you'll be able to deal with a lot. And if you give it time, you'll be able to see the result. I think most people want quick answers. Now, psychologists are not magicians. We don't do abracadabra. Or we say, come up. I'm not mentioning names. Dear viewer, I'm not mentioning names. Say, receive. No. We don't do that. We are highly scientific, and we get to journey with you. Change of behavior takes time. That's what people don't know. It takes time. You can't wake up and say, I am a new creation. The old has gone, behold, the new has come. Kitakuramba, utarudi back to ground zero. Kwanza unaangukanga na uso, pa! Then you realize, oh my God, things are bad for ground. It takes time, and you need to be gracious with yourself and take the right step. Now, I know we are making fun and enjoying this, but I want to say to someone who's desperate, because I know there is someone listening in who's desperate and in need, that there is help. You can always reach out to, Jael, and you'll get support. We'll link you up to organizations that sort of offer psychotherapeutic support to just help you navigate life, to help you navigate the issues that you have, and to lead you to a place where you have authentic living. There is an authentic version of you that you will never get somewhere else until you learn to really journey with yourself. Yeah.
That is so true. I feel like therapy, it returns you back to yourself. The first time I went to therapy, okay, my first experience was terrible, which is similar to most people's. But then I was like, I'm not giving up. So I got another therapist. As you said, it's relational. So I got another therapist and she asked me a question which I will never forget. She asked me, are you sure the personality with which you're living in is who you truly are? And I went home and I was asking myself, have I been living a lie all my life? Because then who am I really? But it really challenges you to think through and to just try and understand who you are. So yeah, people ought to go to therapy. How does trauma-informed care or trauma-informed therapy differ from other approaches of therapy?
That's a nice question. Never asked that question. Trauma-informed care is more collaborative. It's more a space that creates safety, trust, empowers, unlike the other modalities of treatment. Now, with trauma-informed care, you have to learn way more than what you are taught in school. Trauma-informed care finds out, what happened to you rather than what's wrong with you. Yeah? Because there are therapists who will ask you some things. So how did that make you feel? I'm not attacking anyone. Sounds very mechanical. But trauma-informed care just creates spaces that honor lived experiences and avoid re-traumatization. So that's majorly just it with trauma-informed care. And shout out to any psychologist listening in. This is me lobbying for trauma care, trauma-informed care. There are modalities such as trauma-informed, CBT, EMDR, which a lot of now the Kenyan fraternity and practitioners in the ecosystem are sort of journeying towards. It's actually a good modality of treatment for our patients and our clients.
You mentioned that one of the things that trauma-informed care majors on is creating a safe space, therapeutic space, which is also collaborative. From my experience with the people that I've had conversations about therapy and mental health and all that, a good number of people have actually tried therapy. The only challenge is, like I said, they had a very bad experience where either the therapist or the mental health professional in that case, whether they're therapist or psychologist or whatever, they approached them with trying to fix them, as opposed to what you mentioned, creating space and just honoring their lived experience. So how can someone know that this is a safe therapeutic environment? Or when they're going to approach a therapist or a mental health professional, how can they know that this person is going to honor my lived experience and help me to walk through this journey?
I think safety means consistency, confidentiality, non-judgmental presence as you journey with your therapist. For many survivors of trauma, their lived-in experience is a story of resiliency, not a story of weakness. And we have to honor that. Your therapist is bound to create therapeutic goals, therapeutic plans with you as you journey towards, this set out goal that you have set out as a team. It also means the therapist is attuned to triggers and goes at the client's pace. As I said, therapy is highly relational. Trauma-informed care is actually extremely relational. You consider the client first.
You mentioned something earlier that therapy is a journey, and psychologists are not magicians. Most people, again, from my experience, they're like, I want to go to therapy, but I'm not going to spend a long time. So fix me and fix me quickly. How long does the healing journey take?
Wow. Hey, Jael. Hey, this is tough. Hey, healing is not linear and has no fixed timeline. Allow me to just put out there. I can see the virtual claps. Thank you, therapists. Thank you very much. I can see them. Muna ni celebrate vizuri tu. Niendelee kuinject. Okay, so it's not linear and has no fixed timeline. It really depends on the individual history, their support system, the resiliency that they have, and pretty much their journey. So the type of trauma they've experienced. There are clients who, in 5 sessions, they are good to go. And there are some, it will take lots of years. There are some that it will take lots of years. Let's talk a case in example, grief, loss and grief. By around 2020, my mother-in-law went to be with the Lord. And the journey seemed hard, then easy. Then you build resiliency and capacity to, embrace the grief. But again, it's fluid, it has its ups and downs. And therefore you will find a client who comes, for example, they have experienced loss and grief. And 10 years, 20 years, they're still grieving. I have a friend who, when the mom passed on 20 years plus, but on that specific day, he would pause and his life seems shattered and broken. He would really sort of just delve there and tarry and just reminisce on the past, on how his childhood was like. There is never a timeline, and everyone heals at their own pace, and we have to embrace that. Now, money is an issue, and I'm glad that now we have the Ministry of Health coming in, licensing psychologists, and we hope insurance panels, if they're listening in, please onboard psychologists, please, because the need is a lot and the amounts are crazy. And so sometimes people are constrained because of the finances, and therefore they end up taking 3 sessions, 4 sessions, at most 5. For some who are well off, they will try 10 sessions or try what their psychologist is saying and prescribing as a modality of treatment. But we need these players in the ecosystem to come on board, and we join our hands together with that particular client, that particular patient in mind, ensuring that they get the very best of treatment. So it's not linear, all right? Has no fixed timeline.
I'm sure you've broken hearts, but you've also you've broken hearts, but you've also made the fraternity happy. How does trauma interplay with other mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, PTSD? Because we said it depends with the experiences of an individual and what they've gone through. That will determine how long they need the healing process.
Well, for trauma, it can lead to issues such as anxiety, deep sadness, flashbacks, hypervigilance, all this, what we would coin as classic symptoms that we are on the lookout, which is very progressive when you look into PTSD. Allow me to take you on a tangent. So a particular date, October 20th. Now you see that. When someone starts like that, you just know, kilimulamba, wacha tusikie. So we were bus jacked in October 20th, and that traumatic experience, I got hit, with a gun, and it was a terrible experience. And for the longest time, I feared taking bus rides, particularly at night. Anytime it would get to 7, I'll be like, what, I'm done. I'll sleep wherever I'm at. I'm not going home. And those are symptoms of PTSD. So you'll see anxiety. I really don't want to go home late. You'll see, flashbacks and hypervigilance when you take a bus ride going home. You're like, unashuku kila mtu kwa hiyo basi. And so the root cause was that traumatic experience, which luckily enough, just like you, by the way, my first my first therapy experience wasn't that good. We went there and we looked at each other. Then I remember telling, but October 20th, at least we started dealing with something real. So treating the root cause is very essential, in managing these conditions. A lot of mental health conditions intertwine. Most of them are cousins, and they can sort of migrate from being issues to actually being conditions. And so you need to be managed early. And that's why we have psychologists on board to help you with the preventive care rather than the curative that, psychiatrists come in. And shout out to psychiatrists in Kenya. They're really doing a noble job.
I am so sorry about that experience. Do you still have issues with
Well, I dealt with every issue. Now I can travel even late at night. I have no issue. The hypervigilance, Elisha, the anxiety, we really dealt with a lot of issues, even personal experiences from my childhood, which we had never unpacked. So it was actually a good journey. And I really, really recommend therapy. You see, a lot of people think therapists don't go to therapy. Yes, we do. And it really helps us so that we are able to really support you well. Yeah. Hurt people. It's a cliche, but it's true. If you don't deal with what hurts you, you end up poisoning the entire community. But if you're able to deal with it, you're able to come and tell your story in a more stronger way. And I really believe stories have power. Your story of resiliency, of how you've dealt with a traumatic experience, can change someone in your community. Jan, let me tell you something, why the old people don't subscribe to therapy. Back in the day, wazee wangekaa kwa baraza in a circle, and there was a leader, and these people would unpack life issues and they would discuss them. I'm speaking this from a manly perspective just to paint a picture. They are seated in a pot of busa and having their good drink and tabling issues. Bibi yako alininyorosha kofi mbili. Hey, bibi yako aletwe kwa baraza. By the end, family causes stress. A lot of people are struggling at their workplaces, courtesy of that nagging wife or courtesy of that nagging husband. Nimeweka hapo draw, tumeweka 1-1 goal imebalance. So they would sit around. It doesn't mean that they didn't deal with life issues. They dealt with life issues in their own style. When you look into the traditional African society, you get to see this. Part of the reason why group therapy sometimes is powerful when you're dealing with things like A&A, because you get that group support. We need to really look back to who we were. The more we have grown now, the more lonelier we have become. I have something in my house that I tell it, Alexa, play me song flani. But what surprises me is, over your birthday, you can tell Alexa, sing for me happy birthday. And then, when your TV just goes pew and starts singing happy birthday for you. We are that lonely now. And that's why we need therapists. It's a sad reality, but we do. When you look at our parents, you'll see that they've maintained some of their old relationship. Now, let me ask you, uko na mabeshte wangapi wenye mmekuwa mkidu life tangu mwe wadoi? You'll find it's actually kidogo, because maybe your friends are toxic, you've branded them. You're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but zile branding umwanyorosha, umwapiga manemu. Hey, wewe ni narcissistic, gaslighter, sijui nini. Hey, makosa. But that's the reality. That's the reality of things now.
That is actually very true, because then we end up labeling people what they are not. And especially now, because we have so many social media psychologists, and they just come up with so many. So mtu anatumia hiyo kama the SI test yaku, by the alinifanyia hii, yeah, huyu ni narcissist. Alifanya hivi, this one is bipolar. You're like, you need to relax. But you used a good example here, how our parents used to manage issues during their time, so our grandparents. And that's why maybe they're not finding these ways to be in their purview or accepting. How can someone come up with better coping mechanisms? Because I believe there are some things that are therapeutic, even if someone is not able to go to therapy right now for whatever reason. But for them not to go into the dark hole, and now that we have established we live in a very lonely world, what are some of the healthy coping mechanisms that someone can use?
This is actually good. So for anyone who's going through or dealing with trauma, I think the first spot to start from is building a support system. So whether through therapy or having trusted friends, having that circle I was telling you, the very four that you need, sort of building your own tribe and community. And I'm loving the fact that Nairobi is building tribes and communities. That's a good space to start from. So sort of building a support system. Number two, I would say exercises. And one of the low-hanging exercise that ladies you're good at, men we are trying, it's things like journaling. It allows you to really express how you feel. It helps you to really put out word for word, and you're able to see your growth as a person as time goes by. It's an underrated strategy which has high impact and can be very, very powerful. Again, mindfulness. Yeah, did I say therapist? Let me just lobby again and say you need to really get therapeutic support. You always need a therapist. And then engage with your body. Physical activities really, really help. Be it we run Nairobi, or we step up the challenge. Subscribe to something, be it yoga, something that will help you move your body. Your body, just walking alone really helps, deal with things like cortisol and other not so good hormones that really get to affect us to a point of cancer. All right. So by moving, you're buying extra years for your life. But most importantly is being gracious with yourself. You see, the biggest challenge you'll always face, it will be you versus you, not you versus the world, like Westlife told us. The millennials have gotten that one. The Gen Zs are like, who are Westlife again? But it's you versus you. You are your biggest challenge. And if you can overcome yourself and the limitations you set out in your mind, then you're able to live a most fulfilling life. So give yourself permission to rest without feeling guilt. Give yourself permission to fail and rise again. Give yourself permission to seek out support, and do not fear to seek out support, because support is always readily available. All you just have to do is ask.
It's the asking that is the hardest thing. What can you tell people who have a hard time asking for that support?
I think what we get to confuse, or the misconception is that whatever I'm going through is specifically for me. No one else has experienced what I am experiencing. Now, there is nothing new under the sun. Okay, I know I just blew out your bubble, I'm sorry. But it's true, there is nothing new under the sun. And these mental health things, you can, if you are a believer, you are a Christian, you can see them even in the Bible. I mean, there was a guy who had terrible anger issues. His name was Moses, or Elijah, who was highly depressive. Right now he would have been put under antidepressant, seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist working with him. It can be traced way back. So there is nothing new under the sun. And it's that first step you take to say, I will brave this and I will ask from my friends for help, or I will try and share. Listen, your story is powerful and your story matters. And that's what I highly believe, that our stories have the impact to change the world. All of us. And our stories are unique, but our situations might not be unique just to us. It might be something that's temporal. And even if it's a condition, then there is medical treatment to support you to lead healthy lives. And so my ask to you listening in today is, take a step of faith. The lowest, hanging fruit here is call one of us and say, hey guys, I'm just listening to your show and I think I also need help now. So how do I start? And we will journey with you. There are lots of psychologists. There was a whole publication done, gazetted publication. You can check out the names, reach out, DM someone and say, I know you're doing this, from a mental health advocate to, a mental health specialist. They will all link you to a space of help. All you have to do is brave it out. And I believe you have that in you. You can brave it out. So can we do it right now? Yes, let's do it.
Thank you for sharing and affirming them to actually just take the step and ask for help. You covered a misconception about how to ask for help, but I'd love for you to tell us some of the misconceptions that most of us believe about trauma and all things about our lived experiences.
Trauma is very subjective. People think it's the experiences that you've experienced, maybe in war. You're in Sudan, you're seeing active war, Haiti, the violence. But we experience trauma on a day-to-day basis, and it's subjective to a person. And then people think that, after you experience trauma, you just move on. You just move on and, you heal. Kitu tu itafanyika, unajua, just forget about it. But what happens is you are sweeping things under the rug and you're creating a heap. Healing is never about forgetting. It's actually integrating and reclaiming your power. So yes, trauma is very subjective. Some people get traumatized by just watching a film. This was a contentious issue. For example, there was a film called The Passion of Christ. If you hear reviews about it, you'll hear how it was a traumatic experience, how Mel Gibson loved to see pain and, inflict pain through people's eyes, even if they were just narrating an actual story of what really, really happened. But there are films, movies that if you are an action enthusiast like myself, kuna vita, unasema yenyewe huyu alicharazwa, alipigwa properly. Trauma happens all around us. Things that are happening sometimes even in our nation. We recently experienced, the Gen Z protest, and it was a bit traumatizing to a couple of people. And I really hope if you experience that you seeked out for help and support. There are lots of therapists, giving out free support. So it's not only, the experiences of war. It goes over and beyond that. It's the things that happen all around us. You might be involved in an accident. You might lose a loved one. You might lose a job, those chini ya maji, and then you get rejection. Now you are applying for work, and then umekula rejections kama 18 and counting, and plus, it's still going on. And then kuna wale wanakughost. Wacha nitumie pop psychology, wanakuchapa ghosting. Your relationship can be traumatic. I know of a couple of people who have been like, where dereva shukisha, because this relationship shenanigans, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And so it creates such an unrest and a traumatic experience. So it's very subjective to the person. You can never move on by just sweeping it under the rug. You have to deal with it. You need to be gracious to yourself and reclaim your power.
And reclaim your power. I love that. It sounds like so much doom is what you handle. What gives you hope? What gives you hope? And could you share with us some of the transformative stories that you've encountered?
I think the most rewarding starts with myself, seeing myself moving from a place of despair to a place of hope, and dispensing that hope and being an advocate for that hope, showing people that it is possible. I get to experience trauma. It's not that I'm immune to it. I get to still experience it. So the first story of success is myself. Then the second story of success is seeing clients moving from a place of despair and isolation to a place of rediscovering, a sense of themselves, leading that authentic life that I've been talking about all through. That gives me hope for the future. That gives me the good juice to fuel me up for the next person who would walk in with their head hanging low because of what they've gone through, knowing that indeed their situation is not fully permanent, but they can reclaim themselves. So I love when I see my clients move to a place of safety, when they have the beautiful laugh like we are laughing here and just having a good chat, and when they reconnect with their purpose. In our world, we get to see a lot of people struggling with that, trying to find their purpose. Right now, there is someone listening in and asking themselves, yes, I did, this engineering course. Yes, I did this, journalism course, but what's my purpose? And they get sort of wamepotea in that world because of the things that have been happening all around them. So seeing them rediscovering that sense of purpose really reignites me and refuels me to push on further.
If there's someone who's listening and they're wondering, okay, so I've had all that, but the way they're feeling, they don't even have, they're just so isolated, or they feel like they have gone through so much trauma that they don't even know where to start from. What can you say to them?
First and foremost, I really appreciate and celebrate you for just who you are. I celebrate the fact that you're putting up effort through each day. And I know each day might be a struggle, but you're braving it out. You're not broken. You're resilient. Your pain is valid. And I know there are people who will be like, no, achana na hiyo story, but really your pain is valid and you are not alone. That there is ready help. So healing is possible, even if it feels really far away from you right now. It is possible. And there is no shame in seeking help. I believe that's what challenges us into taking that first bold step in seeking out support. But there is no shame in seeking out help. Your story needs to be held with compassion and care. And there will always be hope. And so my suggestion to you is to request that you take that first bold step to seek out support, and that there will always be support, that you're not alone, and that your story matters. I've said before that your story has the power to influence the masses, to influence the nations, and to encourage someone who's going through something. So you're not alone, and there will always be help. And our arms as psychologists always be wide open to accept you, to celebrate you with all the flaws. We will celebrate because you are uniquely you and perfect just the way you are. But we will help you heal. You're very, very important. We have to help you in the journey of healing, one step at a time, celebrating each step.
Wow. I felt like that was for me, like you were talking to me. So I am believing that as you're listening to this, you really take that to heart, because as I'm seated here opposite Dr. Macharia, he really meant every word that he said to you. Is there anything that we didn't cover, we haven't approached or touched on, that you'd want to speak on?
I just want to give a big shout out to every traumatic survivor, that you're not alone and your story matters. And let's create supportive communities all around us. For someone who's out there wondering, where can I get this guy? I sit out at Intimacy Dai Wellness Sanctuary. That's in Karen, on a road called Tree Lane, off Tree Lane, Rural Road. That's where we are at. We are a medical clinic and a wellness space, providing both curative and preventive measures all round to ensure your holistic support. And so if you desire to engage more, karibu sana. We would open to host you and have conversation with you around you, leading a life of wellness. And I'm really, really grateful that we are able to have these conversations, Jael. This is not just to end here, but this is conversations that we want you to carry forward in your offices, to carry forward in your, chamas if you're ladies, to carry forward in your girl group when you're hanging together. And for jamas, we don't have a lot, but I'm doing something around it. On Father's Day, we are trying to carve out something for jamas. So please come out. Intimacy Dai, wakuje Intimacy Dai, we do something around men's wellness and what it means for us to lead resilient lives as men. So at least even for jamas, tuanze to have this conversation, because again, the statistics and the odds are stacked against us. And so we need to continue with this narrative and have healthy conversations that bring necessary change in our communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Macharia. Our tagline, so to say, is the space where healing hearts connect. So we're already creating a tribe of individuals where our hearts will be connected and we are healing through that connection. So I really appreciate your time. I am grateful for the work that you do. I thank you for even, touching on areas where you see are neglected and you jump on them, even with the men and fathers, because we need you guys. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and we will definitely be sharing all about you and Team Sidai. I love that name, by the way.
It means beautiful forest. It's a Maasai word, and Team Sidai, meaning beautiful forests. One of the things that we are big with is wellness in nature, and we are on the Eastern African corridor, one of the premier spots for ecotherapy, or what we call forest therapy. It's one of the modalities we use for our treatment. Something that has been done, lots of research work gone into it through Harvard University. The Japanese have really built on it. If you've been down south in South Africa and Jozi, there are a couple of establishments that do ecotherapy. So we are one premier spot for ecotherapy. And shout out to the people who also try this, forest therapy out in Karura Forest. A lot of people are seeing the need of, spending time in nature because it heals us. Our bodies get to connect. Those grounding exercises that we get to do, connecting with the trees, it's quite an amazing experience. So please come out. Let's connect.
Yes, I can assure you it is a very, very beautiful space. We have come here, and yes, please visit. We'll share all the details and you'll be able to join Dr. Macharia. Just throw his name. Say you have an appointment, even if you don't. But don't blame me if he says he's not around. But yeah, just try and come here. Thank you for listening, and we'll meet you in our next episode. This has been In Session with Jael Care, the space where healing hearts connect. Hearts connect. Hearts connect. Hearts